Dear participants, you are about to start the second course in an online educational series about sustainability and its relationship to the financial world. As there are many pressing issues out there that could be tackled by such an online course, why did the project partners choose this topic combination specifically? To understand the relevance of this educational series, you have to combine various developments. All project teams have dedicated their research efforts to the topic of sustainability for years, in some cases even decades. Politicians have only made sustainability a focus of their policymaking in recent years. But the concept itself is older and goes back not just a few years but entire centuries. Research has been concerned with the consequences of human activity for a very long time. The sphere of influence is not only limited to ecological problems, but also includes society and the economy. Sustainability is already omnipresent in the public consciousness. But sustainable projects, no matter how small, need to be financed. It is at this point that the research efforts of the project partners and the relevance of the topic come together. The result is a three-part course series that is free of charge and, thanks to its online structure, can be completed by anyone, anywhere in the world. We hope that we can inspire the participants of the topic and wish them a lot of success and insightful time in the world of sustainable finance. In this Module 1, we strive to explain, contextualize, and illustrate the different views on sustainability by providing data from different industries and research fields. We invite you to apply these lessons learned to your own context and, maybe, research and/or educational efforts. Education in sustainability implies empowering people to see and judge differently and more integrated. Let's start with the first chapter. In the first part, we will focus on the basic concepts for sustainability and the history of the term itself. So what is covered in this chapter? After completion of the first part, you will be able to describe the history of the term sustainability. Second, you will be able to illustrate the reasons for the advent of sustainability. You will also be able to discuss the milestones of sustainability from different perspectives. And finally, you will be able to discuss the problems of finding a common definition of the term sustainability. Let's start with exploring the development of sustainability across 3 centuries from the late 1700s to the early 2020s. With focus on presenting and discussing the most important literature, we will deal with the most important insights of ideas on sustainability from different angles. Since the vast amount of academic knowledge tends to be overwhelming, the time frame is subdivided into 3 periods, each of them building upon previous conceptual ideas on what sustainability means and how to achieve it. Nowadays, the term sustainability is mostly connected with environmental and ecological shortfalls, such as climate change and environmental disasters like oil spills. Interestingly, the word sustainability, in German the term is translated as Nachhaltigkeit, has been mentioned by a forestry expert from the region of Saxony in 1713. In the literature, most academics either touch down on this date or jump right to 1960, leaving out some essential chains of thoughts which motivates sustainability research even today. In order to prevent such skipping, the review examines the developments and events which finally inspired von Carlowitz to write his manifest, and which later on initiated the sustainability movement we know today. As science and research were still in their infancy before the 18th century, scientific articles and academic literature on sustainable considerations are hard to find or simply did not exist. However, the idea and motive of sustainable living reach back to early Christian beliefs. Before the rise of Protestantism in the early 1500s, the social order was a result of a distinct worldview. Shaped and spread by the doctrines of the Catholic Church, humankind was perceived as essential creatures on earth, destined to rule and make use of nature and its resources. Based on this anthropocentrism, animals and plants themselves had a different, less intrinsic value compared to humans. Nowadays, proponents of the sustainable movement strongly criticize the preceding focus on anthropocentrism as the root cause of all environmental problems. This critique will be explicitly discussed later. In essence, the anthropocentric world order was a theological concept developed right before the period of the Renaissance and has been held onto by society until the early 20th century. The argumentation was based on the Holy Scripture and acknowledged God as the creator of the world. Taking it one step further, the clergy of medieval times argued that as God created the world as we know it, he also takes care of its future existence. In particular, the cycle of creation is evident, inter alia, and the change of seasons or daily change from dusk to dawn. As God is the ultimate force of nature conservation, humans are allowed to dominate nature by a God-given right without having to wonder about potential consequences. Picked up by philosophers and political leaders, for example Descartes at that time, anthropocentrism never served to explain the prevailing attitude to nature or animals. Quite the contrary. The concept of human domination only focused on the relationship between the individual and the community. The interaction between humans and nature was characterized by the increasing demand for the primary resource, wood. Before the Westphalian Treaty of Peace, Europe was in a constant battle. Ongoing wars called for constant delivery of resources such as food, materials to build housing, and war supply. All of these factors contributed to the clearing process of European forestry in mid-medieval times. Due to environmental and economic consequences, scholars and scientists put the effort into suggesting new ways to make use of resources by reducing or neglecting unsustainable agriculture or forest management. The work of von Carlowitz and Hartig set the tone for the sustainability movement starting in the early 18th century. Looking at the publication by von Carlowitz, the idea presented are strongly connected to contemporary concepts. Because of its direct link to natural preservation efforts, research on sustainability mostly examined the ecological aspect of sustainability throughout history. Nevertheless, it is crucial to examine other areas that have been influenced by the ideas of sustainability to get the bigger picture. In particular, the next section deals with the ideas of two movements which rooted in two core societal and economic grievances. The first one refers to ecofeminism, which attacked the ideology of male-centered society. Proponents of this movement criticized the implications of the Industrial Revolution and the hierarchical order which placed men on top. The core belief was that, following the established societal order, had led to unstable consequences such as natural destruction and oppression of lower classes of society. Taking a closer look at this chain of thoughts, the justification for this movement roots in the same criticism that has been presented on the topic of anthropocentrism. The key issue mentioned in both movements is the practice of domination and the pyramidal structure, which has not only become evident in natural dualism, but also within classes of society. What makes the ecofeminism movement so distinct is the characteristic of emphasizing differences between males and females. Referring to modern perception of ecofeminism, the dimensional spectrum of it has grown large, tackling many different factors, for example educational and labor-related disadvantages. The second movement can be directly connected to ecocentrism and the philosophical beliefs of ecology. The reason for this lies in the shared critique for letting economic interest being the decisive factor when it comes to decision-making by humans. Material welfare has been the priority. The well-being of people and the planet is stated to have come in second. Being spread by the labor movement in the 19th and 20th century, starting in Central Europe, the ideology of Marxism evolved into one of the most formative forces in its time. Despite of the shared criticism, proponents of eco-socialism present a distinct set of beliefs which differs them from other eco-reaction movements that are described. instead of taking on the same path by arguing against anthropocentrism and human domination, the true cause of destruction, poverty, and inequality within societies should be associated with the allocation of production resources, as the influence of human domination is only the tip of the iceberg. The underlying assumption is that the availability of human capital and material scarcity distributed not only resources, but also power and steers harmful competitiveness amongst market players and nations. The consequences of Marxism are evident to every scholar in the field of business economics, so this review continues to dedicate the next subsection to the last reactionary movement which connects to the start of this chapter, namely eco-theology. By now, there should be a clear understanding of the early medieval way of perceiving the role of humans on Earth. Naturally, the Catholic Church was in need to argue against the upcoming criticism of its very own doctrine, trying to find ways to adapt religious tradition in accordance with changing society. When it comes to change, the Catholic Church has been attacked for old-fashioned thinking and other scandals which revealed much deeper-set problems. Nevertheless, the adaptations that have come into force altered the understanding of human, the medieval dualism, and the perception of nature. First and foremost, modern eco-theology theory highlights the interdependence of humans and nature, which is a core statement of ecocentrism. In addition, the theological reasoning is based on the present while acknowledging the fact that every action today will affect the world of tomorrow. In contemporary terms, sustainability is often defined as a construction of multiple dimensions. The basic construction consists of three distinct factors: society, environment, and the economy. This idea of interconnected dimensions was steered up after the proposition of sustainable development had been publicly announced by the Brundtland Commission in 1987. This publication marked a decisive moment for the sustainability movement, as it was the first time an international organization provided a vast policy outline on how to achieve sustainability development. Furthermore, it did not only highlight the importance of nature conservation or preservation. The Brundtland report acknowledged the fact that only holistic approaches can lead to a sustainable practice, thereby integrating economies and social systems into the framework. Moreover, the publication of the Brundtland report put the transition from an isolated system of sustainability into an integrated system of sustainability. Overall, the late 17th century paved the way for progress, particularly in the area of biology and natural sciences. However, the newly discovered interest was not driven by a changing attitude towards the prevailing anthropocentric world order. It rather was a response to uprising mercantilism and the need for economic change in order to be able to deliver primary resources in the future. Whereas von Karlowitz's publication affected forest management and early environmental science research, the academic work published by Hartig presents the basic principles every concept of sustainability is based on till this date. A graphical illustration of the key elements from 1805 is illustrated on this slide. Up to this date, academics have come up with differing definitions, since the conceptualization of the three pillars hardly gives any hint on how to practically implement sustainability. For example, the factor economy. This fact has been stated before by Patsy, who provided an overview of 27 definitions of sustainability in the year 1989. 30 years later, the amount of definitions is considerably larger. The inherent obstacle of defining the term sustainability lies within its normative nature, which has been already mentioned by Dresner in 2008. Putting it simply, sustainability is subjective, and its understanding shifts as norms and standards of societies change. Dimensions and issues incorporated now might lose importance in the next decades. Great! You have made it through the first chapter of this module. So, what has been covered in this part? After this chapter, you are now able to describe the history of the term sustainability. You will also be able to illustrate the reasons for the advent of sustainability and discuss the milestones of it from different perspectives. Finally, you are now able to discuss the problems of finding a common definition of the term sustainability. You may want to know what is up next in this online course. Although we have a common understanding about the relevance of sustainability in the Western world, there is still the question of why do we struggle to meet the requirements of sustainable development? Why is humankind still behind every single target that we set ourselves? Why do businesses and politics struggle to make a substantial sustainable commitment? So, in the next chapter, we will deal with the question of modern sustainability and questioning the understanding and relevance of the most common and popular concepts of sustainability.